Okay, so we've clearly got a little bit of work to do here. Let's go ahead and tackle this Get Started button. We need to make this look like a circular green button that changes color when we hover over it. Well, that's simple. Let's go into brackets. Let's check out what we used for our HTML, and we used the class Get Started button. So what we can do is we can just copy this, and let's take this over into our style.css, put our period there for class, and let's begin writing out some styles to accomplish what we want here. So the first thing we need to do is we need to assign it a background color. So we're going to give it a background color, and that color is going to be pound 6DC 77A, and that'll be that light green color that we want. Now the second thing we need to do, and sorry, let me turn off my volume. The second thing we need to do is we need to add what's called a border radius, and this is going to go ahead and that's going to give us the rounded corners that we want. So we use border radius to accomplish this, and we're going to give this a border radius of 28 pixels. Now, older browsers aren't going to support this, so in order to suffice some of the older versions of Mozilla Firefox and Safari and Chrome, what we can do is we need to do our Moz border radius, and we're going to set this to 28 pixels as well. And then the other one we're going to do is WebKit, and that'll be border radius as well. And we'll do 28 pixels here as well. Awesome. So now we should have the color and a circular button. Let's obviously go take a gander. Awesome. There we go. So we have the this quite ugly button with the background color that we want. We can see that it's circular, but it's still got that blue text. And secondly, it's underlined. Well, that means that we need to change the color for the text color, and the underline is actually what's called a text decoration in CSS. So we can eliminate the text decoration by selecting text decoration, and we're just gonna give this a value of none. But let's look through, and it's often a good idea to scroll through and see all the different options. We could give it an overline or a line through. We're gonna give this an option and none. Now to change the actual color of the text, obviously we know that that's color, and we're going to do pound FFF, and that's going to give us that white color. So let's save that, and now let's take a look. Okay, getting a little bit closer, obviously still not looking like this. Well, it's fine. We just need to make the button a little bit bigger, and then we need to move it down along with all of our other elements up here, which we'll go ahead and do in a moment. So next thing up, let's go ahead and give this some padding. And it needs some padding not only on the top and bottom, but the left and right. So if you recall when we talked about padding, we can use the, instead of writing padding top, bottom, left, and right all individually, we can give them all their values within one line of code, and we do this by assigning each value top, right, left, and bottom. Well, what's going to happen is if we give it two values, let's say I give it two values, 10 pixels, and let's do 26 pixels. What's happening here, as opposed to it just taking the top and the right, what it's saying is for the top and the bottom padding, I want you to give this 10 pixels. So let's go ahead, and then for the left and the right, it's going to give it 26 pixels. So I want to show you really quickly what it's saying. Oh, and it's already applying that. It's saying that on the left and right, I want to give it a specific amount of pixels, and the top and the bottom, I want to give it 10 pixels, and then 20 pixels on the left and the right. So we already can see this. Let's go ahead and save that. All right, so that's looking good. We obviously don't want this where it is currently jammed up there in the top. So we can also change that. We're going to do that by giving this a margin from the top. So we're going to give it a margin top, and this is just going to give it some space from the very top of its parent element, which is going to be that header. And we're going to give this a top of 20 pixels, and we'll save that as well. Oops. Okay, I think I know what's going on. Let's go back into brackets really quickly. And in our Get Started button, we need to add one more thing, and we're going to add a display here. And we're going to display this as an inline block element. And let's go ahead and add that. Now let's have a look Okay, there we go. So now we are good to go. Essentially, don't worry about what happened there. If you want to learn a little bit more, just go ahead and Google inline block and see how that display works. And for that matter, go look at how all the different displays work. I know we talked a little bit about block versus inline, but it's always a good idea to learn a little bit more as we go. But that looks pretty good. We could also probably, I think I want to take the size of the text up a little bit, and for that matter, change the text entirely. So let's give this a new font size, and I'm going to take this up to 17 pixels. Now let's save that, and let's change the actual font that we're using in the entire website, because it's definitely not the same as this one. This one's definitely a sans serif. You notice it doesn't have those little edges, especially here, and within here we're definitely using a serif font. So let's go ahead and change that. Okay, so let's go back in to brackets, and we need to change our font up a little bit. Now this isn't something we've seen yet, but if we were to change the font in our body, what's going to happen is it's going to change the font for all of our body text, but we would then need to individually change it for our H1. So let's try something new here. Let's do HTML. And yes, we can style our HTML as a whole, and we're going to change the font here. So let's go to font family, and as opposed to what we have, I want you to type, we're going to do Helvetica new, and we'll close that, and we're going to do period, and then we'll do Arial as well, so ARIAL, and we'll close that with another comma, and then we're going to do sans serif, and that's not going to be in quotations, and we'll close that off, save that, and let's see if that went ahead, and there we go. So we now, you'll notice we don't have that same text that we have. It's a little bit closer to what we're dealing with here. Definitely looks a little bit better. Get started. Let's see what we're missing here. So we're definitely missing some spacings. Let's go ahead and start tackling that as well. The first thing I'm noticing is that this get started is actually touching the very end of its div. So let's go ahead and make that happen really quickly, and that should be rather easy. We're just going to float that to the right, and we'll do that by, let's go in here, get started, and let's give this a float, and if you recall, we can float it to the right, left, or center. Make sure I spell that right. Okay, there we go. So now we have our get started moving all the way out to the right. That looks pretty good. We need to change our home features and about sign up. Let's go back in and change that as well. Okay, so let's go back up to our menu LI, and what we can do is, before we do that, let's give the actual menu itself a style, and that's because we want to move the menu down a little bit, and the way that we're going to do that is we're just going to give it a padding from the top, or let's give it a margin top rather. And we'll call that, let's just do 32 pixels. And then let's go back into, and that should move the entire menu down. And within our menu LI, we need to give it some padding as well. So we want, and let's save this so we can look, and we're going to continue to look at the website just so we can talk about what's happening. All right, so we have our menu is moved down, but we need there to be a large space right here in between each word, right? So it looks more like this. Well, that'll be rather easy. What we can do is we can just give each one of these LI items a padding that goes to the right, and it'll give us some more space. So to do that, we'll just give it a padding right, and then let's give that about 30 pixel space. Let's save it, and once more, let's take a view. All right, there we go. Perfect. So now we have that great spacing. It's actually coming along quite nicely. We just need to make sure that we move our awesome guy down here. So let's go back in, take a look at the index.html and see what we have going here. So we have our image source here in our column 3. There's a couple of different ways we could tackle this. One, we could change our column 3 images. But what I suggest we do is we just give this image a class, and we'll call this class logo. That way we can now edit our logo class within our style. So let's go back in here, and we can probably do this. This is going to be within our column, so let's do it right here, and we'll call logo. And we need to give this a padding from the top as well, and that's going to be another 30 pixels. And that should about do it. So let's take a look there. Okay. There we go. So we have pretty much everything set up. Let's see if we can't make it look exactly the same. Obviously, the text is a bit different. This is a bit thinner. We're not going to worry about that for right now. We will look at font weights in a little bit. But it also appears that the content itself is a bit thinner as well. So I think I want to, let's change the entire width of our header here. Our header container. And let's just bring that down to around 75%. There we go. So now we have this a little bit closer, looking pretty good. We'll stick with this for now. We'll come back and change things if we want to. We may want to lighten up this font and make it a little bit thinner, but as for now, we got that looking pretty good. Now we can move on to this little main section that has this background image. It's got a little form here, and then this play button isn't actually active. I just inserted an image there. We're not going to learn how to implement different video players just yet.